There is a state where your old life still goes on by inertia, but inside everything has already collapsed, as if the inner walls you were used to have crumbled to dust, leaving you alone with a silence where nothing happens. You walk the same streets, look at the same faces, say the same words, and at the same time, you feel that an invisible crack has appeared between you and this world, thin like early ice, foretelling the end of the familiar order. What you once relied on, religion, faith, love, beliefs, authorities, no longer warms or guides you. And the harder you try to return to your old self, the clearer it becomes that there is no way back. This is not a crisis, as psychologists like to say. This is the beginning of transformation. A transformation in which you don't become someone new by someone else's pattern, as your parents, friends, and your environment molded you. Rather, you refuse to be who you were taught to be, because inside it has become tight, and you are no longer satisfied with imposed morals, life stances, or even spiritual guides. This is an inner necessity for change arising within a person when the previous form of existence ceases to be bearable, but no new one has yet been formed. And it is precisely in this state, in this painful uncertainty where there is no clear sign pointing where to go or what to do, that what Nietzsche called the transition from man to Overman can be born. Because man, according to Nietzsche, is not a finished being, not the crown of creation. He is merely a bridge, and the one who dares to walk this bridge to the end, burning alone and casting away all falsehoods, will one day become the one who no longer needs the world's approval. We are used to thinking of man as the pinnacle of creation, a being who has reached the highest point of evolution, the bearer of reason, culture, and morality. We praise progress, take pride in science, find comfort in humanism, as if all this were the ultimate proof of the completeness of our nature. But Nietzsche, observing man, saw not the summit, but a transition, not a finished sculpture, but a stone from which something genuine and alive is yet to be carved. Man, in his design, is a tightrope stretched over an abyss. On one side, the chaos of animal nature; on the other, the possibility of spiritual transformation. This rope trembles beneath your feet. It is shaky and unreliable, and only a few are willing to walk it all the way, because the path demands abandoning what most consider necessary: comfort, belonging, stability, clear answers, and the familiar roles assigned to you from birth. Man is a creature not yet formed. He lives by others' words, others' judgments, others' morals. He copies, repeats, obeys, calling it freedom of choice. He seeks meaning, but looks for it outside himself, in religion, society, systems, ideas invented by others. And Nietzsche says with frightening clarity, as long as you need someone else's truth, as long as you are not ready to become your own meaning, you still hang in the middle of the bridge. You haven't fallen down, but you haven't crossed to the other side. The Overman, in this context, is not a new biological being. He is the one who realized that man is only an intermediate stage, the one who stopped clinging to the old, even if it was sacred to the whole world around. This path is impossible for those who fear being misunderstood and lonely. It is impossible for those who are not ready to burn the bridges leading back. Because to become someone else, you first need to stop being who you were, in the sense of who you were created to be. Just think, you are a set of characteristics you unconsciously adopted, or that random people in your life imposed on you. And this very renunciation is terrifying and painful for you, because it means losing yourself. But not the real you, rather the false image you have worn for so long. You are afraid to let go of this false I, to finally become authentic and free. One of Nietzsche's most famous and profound statements is, "God is dead." This phrase carries neither the joy of liberation nor the triumph of reason over superstition, as many often think. It is not a celebration of atheism, but a waking from a centuries-long slumber. The death of God means the end of those absolute truths that formed the foundation of religion and culture. It is the loss of the support on which man used to rely without questioning. Whereas once the meaning of life was dictated from above, through sacred texts, dogmas, and church institutions, now this meaning has been shattered, and in its place yawns a void. But this void is not a cause for despair or an escape into illusions. It is a challenge to each individual. Because it is precisely in this emptiness that the freedom to create meaning with one's own hands is born, to craft values based on personal experience and inner depth. For the Overman, the death of God is not a loss of faith, but a liberation from external compulsion and imposed ideas that do not correspond to his true self. It is a transition to a state where the meaning of life is not given from outside, but is born within, as an act of conscious choice, as the continuous creation of oneself. Yet this path demands courage, for within the void can hide fear and loneliness, and not everyone is ready to face them. To go there means to renounce imposed beliefs and give up the familiar guarantees that always offer the illusion of security. And it is precisely in this uncertainty that the Overman is born, one who no longer seeks the world's approval, who does not live by others' rules, who takes responsibility for himself and for the meaning of his existence upon his own shoulders. After the death of God, a person usually does not become free. Instead, they simply search for a new idol. When the religious absolute collapses, it is immediately replaced by other forms of worship. Political ideas, ideologies, national myths, the cult of progress, technology, leadership, power, or justice. But in essence, nothing changes. The person still needs something to tell them how to live, what to fight for, whom to consider an enemy, and what to regard as good. They are not liberated. They simply move into another cage built from slogans and symbols, learned phrases and ready-made scripts. The Overman is not someone who opposes a particular ideology. He does not fight the left or the right, Democrats or Republicans. He is beyond these dualities because he sees in them the same attempt to avoid responsibility for oneself. In any ideology, he senses a substitution. Instead of personal depth, a collective identity. Instead of inner responsibility, an external role assignment. And so he steps out of the game. Not as a rebel, but as a mature person who understands that freedom is not loud declarations or choosing sides, but the ability to exist without belonging, without a flag, without a label. This is not indifference. It is a profound, almost ascetic state of inner autonomy, when you no longer need someone else to define what is right, what is just, what is worth fighting for, and what is worth dying for. The Overman does not play ideological wars because he no longer divides the world into us and them. He goes where there are no pre-written scripts, where every action reflects one's personal inner truth, not the repetition of someone else's program. And this is why he frightens others so much, because he cannot be controlled by fear or hope, because he has stepped beyond the game that everyone else continues to take seriously. Being among people is one thing, belonging is quite another. From childhood, a person is taught to be part of something greater: family, nation, religion, political camp, cultural code. We are convinced that without belonging, we are nobody, that only the collective gives meaning, while individuality is just an illusion convenient for marketing. And so, a person constantly strives to be one of theirs, seeking approval, copying the language of their surroundings, thinking as is customary, putting on a role just to avoid being alone. They fear being outside the structure, afraid to cross the boundaries of what's accepted. Because beyond those boundaries, there is emptiness. There, no one will tell you if you live rightly. There is only you and reality. But it is in this solitude that the real begins to happen. The Overman is the one who has passed through the fear of non-belonging, who has realized that belonging to a group is not a guarantee of truth, but often just a way to avoid personal responsibility. He does not oppose himself to others, but he does not belong. He cannot be lured by promises of unity or brotherhood because he knows the price of that closeness. He knows that behind it often lies the renunciation of oneself. Being alone is not pain, but a space for his desires. He is able to remain with himself in complete silence without breaking. He does not seek mirrors to reflect his righteousness. He is his own mirror. This does not mean he takes pride in his isolation. He simply does not make it a problem. He does not protest or demand recognition. He is silent. And this silence is the most formidable thing a crowd can hear, because it contains what it does not understand: inner completeness. The Overman does not oppose himself to the world. He steps beyond its limits. He does not fight society. He no longer needs it. Most people do not create morality. They inherit it from friends, parents, colleagues. We are born into a ready-made world where it is clearly marked what is good and what is bad. We are given these coordinates before we even begin to think. And we follow these rules without questioning who wrote them and why. We are taught that a good person is first and foremost someone who lives by the rules, who obeys and does not ask unnecessary questions. But this is where the lie begins, because rules differ. Good and evil are changeable. What was considered a crime in one culture was glorified in another. What seemed moral 100 years ago now causes disgust. Morality is not truth. It is a tool of power, upbringing, and control. And when a person blindly follows morality, he is not virtuous. He is simply trained like an animal. The Overman is not someone who rejects good. He rejects someone else's good, imposed without personal understanding. He destroys the old morality not because he desires evil, but because he seeks truth. He no longer agrees to be obedient, because he wants to be honest. For him, morality is not a code, but an inner act of creativity. Every action is a choice made not for approval, but from a deep sense of inner truth. He does not need signs saying, "This is sin, this is sacred." He listens to himself and takes full responsibility for it. This is terrifying, because you can no longer hide behind the phrase, "That's how it's done." You can no longer say, "I was just following the rules." This is maturity. to take on the burden of being yourself without instruction. Nietzsche called this overcoming slave morality, the morality built on fear and submission. The Overman rises above this morality. He is not amoral. He is the creator of his own ethics. He acts not out of duty, but out of inner dignity, and therefore his actions are not always understood, but always genuine. The Overman, as Nietzsche spoke of, is not a summit to be conquered once and for all. It is a path, painful, uncompromising, infinitely personal, a path of rejecting the false. It is a process of inner rebirth that happens not in the eyes of the crowd, but in the deepest silence, where there are no advisors and no guarantee that you are doing everything right. The Overman is forged where everything is lost, where you are first forced to let go of everything that shaped your face, habits, roles, masks, explanations, and then, step by step, you acquire something far more authentic, something impossible to describe with someone else's words. And if right now you stand at this point, in a state where old meanings are dead and new ones have not yet been born, this may not be the end, but a beginning, a starting point for something real. If you have the courage not to cling to the past, not to return to the old cage just because it is familiar, you will see something new beginning to emerge. It will not be fast or comforting, but it will be yours. You are not obliged to continue being who you became by accident, through misunderstanding, pressure, or fear of not fitting into society. Perhaps it is in the refusal of this false I that the rare form of freedom is born, a freedom that can no longer be taken away, the freedom to be yourself without needing someone else's approval. Because one day you decided to choose yourself, wholly and without reservation, despite loneliness, despite the great cost.